Ben goes, big bull or something like that. And I look up, and by the time I look up, within seconds, the bull's running down, never made a peep. He ran straight to the water. And so I grabbed exactly, never made a peep. I go to grab the rangefinder. The metal of the release aid hit the plastic of the rangefinder, and it was dead silent. No wind, no nothing. He whips his head to us and just starts staring at us. I'm saying out loud, quietly, but mostly for myself, don't move, don't move.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Drury Outdoors 100% Wild podcast, powered by Deercast. And I continue to be Tim Kjellesvik.
I'm still Matt Drury.
Yeah.
Got that cloud over me.
But we've got someone on today who has blue skies over his head.
That's right. We've been trying to get this guest on for a long time. I've been trying, but it's only because I've been trying to get him in studio. He's a busy guy. He's a World Series champion. He's an all-star. He's an MVP. He's a batting champion. He's everything. This
Country music guy now.
That's right. Analyst for Fox. We got Mr. Adam Wainwright. Wayno, how's it going, buddy?
How are y'all?
We're doing good.
Man.
So we wanted to have you on because we just experienced a pretty epic trip in the Idaho elk mountains here last week. And you're the only guy that killed out of 6. So we figured.
Is that right? I hadn't thought about it. Now that you mention it, that does sound right.
Yeah. Something strange happened, and Adam
or
just
didn't.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's funny because in the moments, I've seen this with Tommy, I've seen it with these guys, when the time comes and the pressure really rises, they rise with it. And Adam, I'd say you did it again, man. The hunt was phenomenal.
It was incredible hunt. It was incredible scenery, incredible place, great guide. But just, I have been waiting 24 years to go on a bow elk trip. I've been a couple of times with a rifle, but always was playing during the September rut, and could never get out there out west and shoot one of those full elk with a bow. And I've been waiting to do that for so long. When you hear those things bugling 15, 18, 20 yards from you, that is a crazy, crazy experience, man. There's just, you can't get that anywhere else besides out there. I mean, it's such a wild place too, wasn't it, Matt? There's places that we walked and I'm like, I wonder if a human being has ever stepped foot where I just put a foot,
100%. We were fortunate enough to go out to McCall, Idaho with Table Mountain Outfitters. And they had, in that area, I think they had something like 50,000 acres. So it was a private land hunt. It wasn't a public land, like over the counter kind of a thing. It was private land hunt, and we had landowners tags that we were able to utilize. But we were so far back there. There were several times where I just thought, we're on the side of the mountain and they're driving like crazy in these side-by-sides. And I thought, if we wrecked, like,
no one's going to find the body.
How would anyone know? No one has service. It was
driving ourselves to the train station was what that would be.
That's right. I actually mentioned that in one of the text messages because I had a few mishaps there, and we'll get into that later. I want to start with Adam though, because right out of the gate, morning one, when we looked ahead at the weather, and I was looking at Deercast leading into the hunt, I sent like Austin Land, Taylor's husband. I sent Mark. I sent a few guys I know who've been elk hunting messages. I'm like, hey, it's going to be a super low pressure, like 29.6, like terrible low pressure, weather, rainy, 3 of the 5 days. Like, what's that going to do to the elk? And Austin said in the rut, they still should do what they do. But Mark was like, I would think it would affect them like it affects everybody else.
Suppressive effect, yeah.
And so I was thinking the first day and the last day were going to be our best opportunities. And right out of the gate, we split up. Aaron Bennett went with you. You guys have been the dynamic duo before, filming and hunting. And then Ben and myself went in another direction. Right out of the gate in the morning, how'd your hunt start out?
Well, if you remember, Matt, originally we thought we were going to have to share a guide, and you and I were going to have to go together. And I think you won first shot, didn't you?
Yeah. And no, we did rock, paper, scissors, didn't we? No, we flipped a coin, which was a coaster.
We flipped a beer thing,
Yeah.
whatever it was.
And you and I said you won, man. So that's the way it should have.
Okay.
That's the way it should have went down.
So then we would have gone together in the first hunt, but Dustin Lynch and Lucas Black, two of our companions, were not in camp yet, so we were able to split up and hunt anyways by ourselves. So I went out, and I'll be honest, as long as I've been waiting to do this, and as many elk videos, bow hunting videos as I've watched and kills that I've watched, there's so much work that goes into it, hiking these hills, and I didn't get that the first day. Like I got out of the cart.
Poor Wayno.
Yeah, I got out of the cart, and we heard an elk bugle not too far off. So we got back in the cart. We drove up a little bit of ways, maybe a quarter mile. At this point, I still have not hiked up or down yet. And our guide hits the bugle, and we hear 4 elk bugle back at us. And one of them extremely close, and we could hear his footsteps even. And it ended up being like a young, 5x5 bull that just, on the first morning of the first day, you're not going to shoot that bull, right? That's not why you came to Idaho across the country to shoot. So he's like, I think you should shoot that bull. And I said, buddy, I told him that story. I'm like, let's just keep going. And it wasn't, we walked around the bend, and 30 minutes later, we were trying to get on some of those other elk bugling. They were coming right to us. And I had 2 bulls, it sounded like they were circling me, to come in and see what was going on. And so Clayton, my guide named Clayton Gallagher, he says, all right, set up right here on this tree. I'm going to go back in the woods a little bit behind you. I'm going to bugle. We'll see if we can get these things to come in. And, I had probably been out of the cart for an hour. At the most. Yeah. At the most.
By this time, I had 10,000 steps.
The DIY guys are like hating so much right now.
Yeah. And I still had not hiked up or down. I hadn't. I mean, this is crazy to me how this happened. And so I set up on this right in front of this tree, and with these elk, you have to have some kind of back cover, especially during the rut. They're coming in. They're so hot. They kind of lose their sense, just like a whitetail. They get dumb for a week or two. And he came in. The first bull came in to me. I thought the bull on my right was going to come in first. The bull on my left was really close. And so I'm set up on this bull all of a sudden to the left. And then surely, as it always happens, the bull on the right actually ended up stepping out first.
Yeah.
And so I could hear Clayton behind me saying, he's coming. And I didn't get a glimpse of him. I didn't know where he was, how far away he was. I knew I could hear him walking. But, when the wind is right, that can kind of sneak up on you a little bit. And he stepped out in the road 20 yards from me, broadside. And it was a big 300-inch bull. Not an incredibly old bull, but he's going to be really, really nice, which I wish I could say that's the reason I passed him. But as I'm drawing back, his head's turned, so I would start to draw. And as I start to draw, he turns his head, busts me right away. As soon as he stepped out in the clearing, he busted me right away. So I'm thinking, well, daggum, there goes our hunt, and we'll just keep moving on. I mean, it's been so quick. I'm like, I'm not that disappointed about it because it happened so fast. Mm-hmm. Well, as soon as he runs off, this other bull, he heard the run-in or whatever it was, and he beelined it straight to me. And we have just the best footage, man, of that hunt. Aaron Bennett on the camera right behind me. Like you said, we've been a great duo before. But he's got this perfect over-the-shoulder shot of this bull. He gets 18 yards from me, and he's in full bugle, all on camera.
Yeah.
And he's a really nice 6x6. I think, he's going to score just under 300. Not like one of the big, giant trophies, but still an incredible hunt, incredible trophy for me. And as he gets so close, he finally looks up and he sees us. But he doesn't know what we are, I guess. And so he runs away. Clayton hits the cow call and he stops. And as he bolts away, in the whitetail, this is this is where the experience kind of helped me. As soon as they run away, there's that time where they might come back and check what you are. So I go to full draw, and as soon as he hits that cow call, he stops, turns around, gives me about 2 seconds to get a shot on him, and I pull back real quick and find him in the scope in the peep. The thing was, here was the kicker. As that bull was walking up to me, I had all this time to kind of think about all the different things. I thought that bull was going to step out at 45 yards, so I had my sight set at 45.
Okay.
So I know as he's getting closer, okay, I'm going to have to adjust where I've got this sight set. And as he turns to run away, I pull back, and I just find about 4 or 5 inches below where I would have shot. And I'm just waiting for Aaron to give me the kill call, and he goes, kill him. And as soon as he says it, I let the arrow fly.
He says, and Adam let it rip.
You know, as they check, if they don't see what they're looking for,
yeah,
they're going to bolt right after that. So I knew I had to make a quick shot. Luckily, we were able to make a very good shot. And man, that footage, the blood coming out from that new NAP Kill Zone 2.0, it was crazy.
It was crazy. I don't think I've ever seen a blood trail like quite at the hit. Like, I've seen some pretty good ones over the years, but that was literally like a bucket of paint was just pouring out.
Well, what I didn't understand was it looked like that was lung area where the hit was, but it bled like there was an artery.
There had to be an artery there because of the way the pressure was. I mean, it was spitting out.
Well, Mark said when we text Mark Drury, Mark said you hit the aortic. I don't remember what kind of artery, the aortic artery, basically, and that's what it was.
So you had your pin set at 45. The HHA was set at 45. He comes in to probably like 15 before he kind of spots you.
He got to 18 yards.
18. He then turns and he's starting to get out. You draw, and you know your pin set too high, so you aim down 4 or 5 inches, and then you just let her rip.
And I had pre-ranged everything in that area that he ended up. So I knew that all of that was kind of like, you know, I was shooting a 1 pin, but if you were shooting a multiple pin, that'd all been top pin type thing. You know, it was all within 35 yards, and he ended up being 28 yards when I shot him.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the reaction, man, it's just great. I swear he might've thought you were a tree. You're in that muddy mossy oak bottomland. You looked like a tree there. And then Aaron, I'm sure, was more like a stump. But,
Nice.
But I mean, he's coming right at you guys and doesn't really think twice until he gets pretty close. And that bugle in the camera full frame, like I'm sure it was like you could smell his breath. He was so close, bugling in your face, man. Oh,
it was when he. So I'm just very still, and as he's coming in really close and he hits that bugle, I'm going, oh, I already know, because I'm thinking the Drury Outdoors play right now, right? I'm thinking that's going to be incredible
production
footage.
value.
Like, that was my first thought is, man, I know
man.
Aaron's on this bull right now, and that is going to be incredible footage. And, you know, I think one thing, then talking to the guides before the hunt and also reading up on these hunts beforehand, you know, I think sometimes people set unreasonable expectations of what bull they're going to take. Mm-hmm. And so they say, I'm not going to shoot anything unless it's a 320 or above. Well, I think in talking to everybody, if you get on a mature bull like I did, and it's a great hunt and it's something that you're going to remember forever, you have to take that shot. And, you know, it's just like a mature whitetail comes out in front of you. And maybe he's not a big 200-inch, you know, whitetail, but he's scoring 150 or 140 or even 130. But it's like a good mature deer, and it's a great memorable hunt with great footage behind me. I was like a no-brainer for me. I never thought twice about not shooting this bull because he's still a really good bull. You know, he's just not that 350 bull. Like, actually, we saw a couple of 350s, and that will always be in my mind. But I don't think I could have had a better hunt with better footage and better fellowship than I had. It's something I'll remember forever.
Yeah. So then Adam gets to be the camera guy for the rest of the trip. Ben had brought an extra camera. This is the best part. No, not the best part. The best part's killing it. I mean, that was the best part. But the next best part was Adam. Then he's like, "Hey, I'm here. I'm here the rest of the week. How can I help?" And so we gave him a camera, and Adam turned into a producer the rest of the trip.
Yeah. And so now I do know exactly how much work goes into elk hunting, because I went up some, 400-foot hills when we're already up in the mountains, straight up on a 30-degree incline, where you're putting your hands on the ground even to get up these hills. It was intense, man. But, I got a chance to get in Aaron Bennett's shoes and carry the camera around. And, I've learned so much hunting with the Drurys for a long time now that, like, I'm looking for, it took me a while to, like, learn how to handle it and hold it and all the buttons so that it wasn't like jiggling around. It looked like, the first time that it looked like I took an energy drink or something and I was like too jittery or something. But after a while I got more stable, but I was always trying to produce like I knew our camera guys would do. I'm catching the sunrises, I'm catching the over the shoulder encounters, I'm giving, pre and post interviews. Hey, what just happened? Or, hey, what happened yesterday? Why are we heading out into the field? Where we're going? And what time is it? What day is it? Which farm we're hunting on? What's the outfitter's name? All that kind of stuff. I had so much fun doing that side of it. And I'll tell you, just being honest, through the years, I'm going, I can't believe these camera guys, I can't believe they get off on filming as much as they do, instead of, because I always want to be the one pulling the bow back, but I get it now because I was rooting so hard. Like one of my best buddies, Scott Linebrink, is who I filmed for 4 days. And we had at least 2 very close encounters every single day of the hunt and just never could. Either it was not the right bull. We had a couple of young bulls come within 20 yards, 15 yards a couple of times, same way as mine did. We had a couple of very big mature bulls get to within 70 yards just behind a tree or something. We could never make it happen, but I was rooting so hard for him, harder than I've ever rooted for me to make a shot. So I totally get the cameraman's view now.
Yeah, so these guys, it's hilarious because they would film skits. They were filming skits, like really, really funny stuff. And while they were out. And so then some of the other guys started filming skits because we also had Adam LaRoche was there. So sure. Buck Commander. So Jordy was with him and they were, it was him. And then Lucas Black, who's an actor, he hunted with LaRoche and he had a camera guy. So there was 4 people in that group and a guide. Okay. And then it was Adam, Scott, a guide, and then Scott's buddy Troy was with them. So they had 4 guys. And it was funny because every night we'd come back to camp and poor Ben, he had the laptop. So they'd be like, hey, put this footage on the laptop. Let's watch this. And everybody'd be yelling at Ben like, no, go back, go to this clip. I think I felt bad for Ben because it was a lot of pressure, but the skits were probably the best part of the whole trip were what you guys came up with out in the field during the daytime.
Yeah, well, and those midday times when the elk are bedded down, we actually got on a couple of bulls that were bedded down that we were able to have some really close encounters with. But they're not responding to the call the same way. You got to be almost on top of them to get them to react. So those midday mornings, when nothing is really going down, you're about to head back for lunch. Some of those days, it was kind of like, you know what? Let's have some fun here. We've already ran off all the elk in this area at the top of this mountain. They're not up here anymore anyways. Let's have some fun. And Scott Linebrink, he's got that like authentic, deep Texas draw and just a great sense of humor. We had some really good time with that.
Yeah, we'll have to put some together and show. Yeah, the one was over the top hilarious. So, it's funny because Adam's first day, Adam and Aaron, and Clayton, everybody came back to camp. We're all hyped. Some of the guys were still coming into camp at that point, and so we all get to see Adam's bull and congratulatory
Sure.
handshakes and all that stuff. And Aaron's like, man, this elk hunting is so, because that was his first experience too. And he's like, this is so easy. It's just like deer hunting with Terry, and he's like, and at that point,
just a matter of time for you guys.
Ben and I had already had, I think it was like 15,000 steps for the day. Ooh. This was probably like 11 a.m. or whatever. And we're like, yeah, it was real easy. We had the guide that everybody said didn't mind,
doing some walking.
He was like a goat, this guy. I mean, he was just up the mountain, real skinny, little bitty guy that would just climb straight up the side of a mountain. And Ben and I are, sucking air trying to keep up. And so by the end of the day, we had, that first day it was like 23,000 steps or whatever. And I don't know how many flights climbed, but Aaron just kept saying how easy it was. Well, Aaron then Dustin came into camp for the afternoon. Okay. Well, they got the guide that I had that morning. I got Adam's guide. And so they were with the guy that was a goat.
Gonna walk.
And by that evening, Aaron was like, oh my goodness. It's a way different hunt this afternoon.
Real taste of it.
Yeah. It was a little more walking in hills.
Matt, in my defense, I ended up walking at least 50 yards down the hill.
Well, there's
recover the bull. Yeah. Yeah, that was the other thing, because they were right by the road that it was amazing. This piece of property, I was like amazed by the roads that they had in these mountains, and it was a private piece of ground. So it was I think two brothers from Texas that owned this piece of dirt, and they spent a ton of money on the road system, forestry management, habitat management. Like you would see a lot of cuts, timber cuts,
sure.
A timber stand improvement, I guess, and kind of help mitigate some of the wildfires. So the road system was kept real nice. Well, Adam just so happened to kill right next to one of the roads.
Hey.
So, they didn't even have to really pack it out. It just lift it up and put it in the side by side.
We backed the side by side all the way down right beside the bull.
No.
And those things are heavy though, Matt. So I got my upright rows in, quarters and
got to work out.
Yeah, they are such huge. I think he said mine weighed between 850 and 900 pounds.
Jeez.
But those big giant bulls, they'll get 1,000 pounds. They are so much bigger than a whitetail, and you're used to whitetail hunting like Matt and I. When you get up next to those things, man, you can't believe how big they are.
Should be easier to hit.
Well, you said it, not me. But I saw several times these bulls. They would walk down a hill in front of us, and they took up like the whole trail. They're just so big. These animals, man. It was so fun.
Adam had his elk processed out there, and he's going to have it shipped back. And the lady calls him, and he's like, tell the story about how she was asking, do you want one of these? Do you want one of these? Do you want one of these?
Yeah, she's like, all right, so we do all kinds of really cool stuff. We can do pepperoni and bratwurst and bologna, and we do, summer sausage, and we do these burgers. We mix in some bacon and some beef fat and, this and this and this. And she's got this laundry list of things, like 20 things long. And she's like, do you want some pepperoni? And I'm like, yes, I do. Do you want some bratwurst? Well, what kind do you do? We do original, we do maple, and we do jalapeno cheddar. And I'm like, that sounds great. I'll take some of those. And then, the regular burgers, and then we got the bacon and beef fat burgers, and we got the jalapeno cheddar summer sausage, and we got the breakfast sausage, with the two or three different kinds of breakfast sausage, and then we got our backstraps butterflied, and we got our tenderloins cut into steaks, and we got lots of grounds. And I was just like, I want it all, man, because elk meat is so good and so good for you.
I can't wait till you ship me some for Christmas, so I could try it.
What are you doing with the rack, Adam? Are you getting a Euro mount or a shoulder mount?
Oh, I'm getting a shoulder mount, and I'm gonna get it. There's a scene in here. I don't know how well it would come through if I put it on my phone, but there's a moment in there when that elk starts to bugle, where he turns his head back kind of, and those antlers look so cool, and he's got his mouth open. That's the moment I'll remember forever and ever. So I'm getting him mounted like that.
That's awesome. It's kind of would be almost like a semi sneak for a whitetail pose, I would think, where he's kind of almost lip curling a little bit. It was I mean, it was such a cool scene of him coming in. That's a good way to have them outdone for sure. So as I mentioned, the weather, you know, it was a little rough for probably the middle part of the trip, right? Those 3 days in the middle. So you shot Sunday was our first day to hunt. You shot Sunday morning. Sunday evening was good. Everybody was having encounters and opportunities. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday were pretty tough. I mean, it was just this low pressure weather system sat over McCall, almost just spinning over, and the fog was so dense. It was one of the prettiest scenes. It reminded me of like Oregon or, you know, up in Seattle, like something like that in the pines. Like it was just a really, really, really pretty scene. But we would hear them bugling, but we just could not get them to act right, you know, for the rut the time of year that we were there. Our guide, we ended up with Clayton, who was the guy that Adam had. He's like, man, usually when you get one to respond and you're bugling, you're cow calling, they come running in. He's like, they lose their mind. They got to kick somebody's butt. You know, they got to come in and see who's there. And we just did not experience that, me personally. Some of the other guys did get those opportunities every day, like Adam was saying, but I never saw an elk. I saw 2 cows. We had an encounter that first morning that Ben got on film of a giant bull that was like 70 yards, but I never saw him just based on where I was positioned. So like as the trip kept going on, we'd come back at night and everybody would show their encounter because we pretty much had a camera guy with everyone on the trip. So we were able to see, which is rare when you go to a place like this for everybody to be filming. Sure. So we were able to watch everybody's footage and check out this bull, and it was just really awesome. But my experience was we were hearing them. I bet I heard 30 different bulls in 4 or 5 days, but never saw a single bull until that last day. And so, I mean, it was tough because once we finally did get this kind of up close and personal encounter, I almost wasn't ready for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Your brain's probably just expecting to not see something.
Yeah. So it was a great 3 days because we were in the rain, we got poured on. I'm sure you guys did too. We stuck it out. We sat in a meadow that we just saw all these elk, an entire herd. That was the only day where I saw a bunch of elk, was the second or third day. I think it was the third day. And they just poured into this meadow, but they were, 200 yards away, and a couple big bulls, but it just poured on us the whole time. And we actually had that new rain gear from Muddy, which was nice. It kind of saved our butts there because I don't think I would have packed rain gear otherwise. So I didn't have any. So that was a nice change of pace to have, to cover up and just sit out there. And we were actually hunting them like turkeys. We sat underneath a cedar tree, kind of tucked on the side of the meadow, and just kind of waited it out. And we were just kind of ground blind hunting without a ground blind, just ground hunting really.
Sure.
So when it was raining, what'd you guys do, Adam?
We were on a bull. When it first started raining, we were about to make a shot. Scott was, we heard this bull bugle, and our guide was named Ryder. And Ryder looked at me and said, all right, do you want to go get this bull? And we're like, yeah, we want to go get this bull. He goes, all right, I just have to warn you, this is going to suck. And when we shoot this thing down here at the bottom of this canyon, packing them out is going to be even worse, like terrible. And we're like, man, we're young, strong, strapping guys. We get about halfway down this thing, and it's straight down. I mean, straight down almost. And I look at Scott, and Scott looks at me, and he's like, he was right. This is going to be a real challenge. But, we were, when they're playing the game, when the elk are bugling back and they really want a piece of it, when they want, when they're, like you said a minute ago, when they're ready to fight, you got to go to them. You got to either set up or you got to go find them, because there just wasn't enough bulls that were like you said, they weren't coming in like they normally do. So we went to this bull. We get down in the bottom of this thing, and it's a big 5x5, like a really big old bull, nice mature bull. And we had him facing directly to, but he came out of nowhere, and he just was right in front of us at 60 yards, facing right at. So Scott couldn't draw, and those bull elk, you can take a frontal shot. Because there's one big kill zone right there in the front, but they can't be really quartered either way. But they also, if they come down on you real quick and they're forward facing you and they're staring right at you, you can't, as you know, you can't draw or they're going to bust out of it.
Yeah.
So he waited, and then we had him at 55 yards broadside, perfect. But he was right behind this big tree that was blocking his entire vitals. And even on camera, all I could see was his head and his tail. And I'm hoping from his angle that he's going to have it. But I'm also thinking from a camera's view, like if this bull would just take a couple more steps up, then we can get the penetration on the shot. Would be a lot better footage.
Yeah.
But he, as those big ones do, man, they're big for a reason. He stayed behind that tree, and it was like he knew where that tree was and where we were. And he backed out like right behind the tree, and we never had a shot on him. But when it started to rain, that was a long story for the rain question. As it started to rain is when we were on that bull, and we didn't really realize it until that encounter was over, how wet we were. We were starting to get soaked. Luckily, I did have my muddy rain gear on, but we curled up under those big pine trees. We had a couple of big cedars and pines in front of us. We curled up under those and could stay pretty dry there. But man, when those storms roll in those mountains, it changes so fast. And going back to that fog, I really think more than the pressure and all that, I think that fog had a big hand in those elk not bugling and stuff, because as soon as on the next day, as soon as that fog lifted, the squirrels started chirping and the birds started chirping and animals started moving again. I think they sit tight when they don't have a visual. They sit tight.
Yeah, definitely could be the case because it was so thick. I mean, you couldn't see 50 yards. I mean, it was getting to where like 50 yards out, it was like questionable what was past that. You know, it was just even the cameras couldn't focus through it. My rangefinder sometimes would be fine. Sometimes I was having weird issues, like it was grabbing the fog. It was so dense.
Yeah, so thick.
So we went, we had plenty of opportunities where one would bugle and then we would make a play on them. I probably knocked an arrow 6-7 times. I just never saw the elk within that period.
Is there a point of demoralization in there?
It was definitely tough because you're just like, man, I mean, everybody's having the encounters where you actually see the bull. And in this case, where it's 55 yards or whatever, it's behind a tree where you could at least lay eyes on them. And I just really wasn't experiencing that. Ben caught a couple of them on camera, probably 2 or 3 different bulls he caught on camera. But positioning wise, I never saw him, one of those kind of deals. Yeah. And I think the tough part was, the part that I liked the most, that was the most challenging, but was also the hardest, was that mentally was that when you'd make a play on one, and Adam alluded to it, where they went with Ryder down the hill. Well, they get all the way down there. You got to come back up out of that, back up the mountain. And so we had a couple where the first play was going down, and then, the stalk didn't work, and you're like, shoot, now we got to come back up this thing, and like just totally sucking air trying to get back up it. Well, we've had some where we're chasing them and we're going uphill, going up the mountain to chase after them. And our guide, he was a tall guy. He played ball in college. He was a big guy, and he was like a goat for a bigger guy. Yeah. He could get up, and you could just tell like they were acclimated to it. They were used to it. Sure. And Ben and I were trying to just keep up with him, and you'd get halfway up, and he was nice enough. He'd stop, and we'd all catch our breath, and then we'd go back up after a second. But you'd make these stalks on them, and then by the time you get there, they might bugle one more time. This is what happened most of the time to us. Our thermals would change. Thermals would switch on you because of this front. It was just swirling. There was like no wind. It was the weirdest thing. And I think it was Dustin Lynch kept saying this. He's like, for the mountains, he's like, it's amazing to me that we have 0 wind. It was 0 wind for almost the entire trip. And so your thermals would take over, and they were constantly switching. And what amazed me was an elk's nose, much different, like I think even more heightened than a whitetail, because it would be, 300 yards away, and then they just stop bugling. And so either they got a cow or your thermal. They got your thermals. And what's different than a whitetail, they would never, only once or twice did they like, a cow would bark at us, which was, did you hear any cows bark? That was a crazy sound. Crazy sound. And, you know, so then you knew, okay, they got us, so we're for sure toast. But most of the time, they never made a beep, and then they stopped bugling. And you're like, what the heck? They were hot. They were just going crazy here. What happened? And you never saw them, and you never knew what exactly happened. But then a minute later, they'd be 600 yards away and they'd bugle, and then 700 yards away and bugle. And you're just like,
sounds like turkey hunting.
Yeah. Oh, it was a lot like turkey hunting. Big time.
It was. I had so much fun with those thermals and recognizing how skilled those guides were with the thermals and the use of them. I mean, you know, as the morning sets, you know, the sun's not up yet. It's still dark. Those thermals are going to work down the hill.
Yeah.
Right. And then as soon as the sun peaks, those thermals are going to work up the hill, but it changes completely on how you approach a bull. You have to think, all right, here in about 20 minutes, I know our wind's going this way, but in about 20 minutes, our thermals are going to be going straight up this hill. And we have to approach this bull that's bugling in a totally different way. And I probably would have been busted out of there 4 or 5 different times before I learned that because they knew they just had to rely. They know, all right, as soon as that sun peaks, those thermals are going to go up that hill. And so we need to be over here. We can't get too close because if we get too close, our thermals are still working downhill. It was just like the coolest experience. You know, I hunt most of the land I hunt here at my farm here in South Georgia. It's so flat, you know, that it's different thermal game. It's different, you know, I like getting out of my element there, and Missouri's hilly enough where we do all that up there, but not like that. That was pretty neat, wasn't it, Matt? Wasn't it unique?
Again, it's almost like if you think about baseball and pitching, you know, what you've always done, the game within the game, the mind games of, you know, what you need to do to kind of beat somebody, what they think that you're going to throw versus what you're going to throw. It's almost like that in an instance, like, okay, the thermals should be doing this. They're constantly checking the wind, and then all of a sudden they switch. So we're almost running to get in front of the thermals and get around, right? And Mark told me that ahead of time because it was like any advice. He goes, it's been a long time, you know, since I've gone, but he goes, what I remember the most of our archery elk hunting days, and they used to hunt with Abe Moline, which was a great guide. He said he was constantly checking the wind, and we would run to beat where the thermals or the wind was going. And that's exactly what the whole trip was all week long. Just like, taking off to try to get around them, you know, or get even. It didn't even take much. Get to a draw or get above them slightly, you know, or get around slightly. And that was the game within the game. I think that I enjoyed that aspect of it, you know, a lot.
So Adam, how do you walk that line of you're had a very blessed hunt, killed on the first day, but also being able to give your buddies crap in camp? So that like line of graciousness and also I'm going to bust on these guys a little bit.
Well, I know from experience that when I get cocky about a kill, my next few hunts, I'm going to have the spike curse, or I'm going to be, you know, I'm going to be garhold or whatever. So I know I only do it if they bring it up. Like Matt's brought it up several times today, and I go, well, since you said it.
Yeah.
That's right.
But I try not to bring it up at all because I know that what goes around comes around. And so I just tried to stay excited for them. But if they brought it up, I'd relish in that moment.
Here's
sure.
the thing about Adam. He's one of the most gracious, nicest humans you'll ever meet. And so he's the biggest cheerleader for the camp. And he said it right away. He's like, now that I've killed, I'm going to be y'all's biggest cheerleader. I want to film. I want to be the camp cook, the whatever you guys need, the pack mule. I'm here to help. And he's legitimately like that. And that's not I'm just trying to be nice. Like that's how he is.
Sure.
So he was always cheering. That's the good part about the group. And you never know because it was kind of an eclectic group of people. You know, some of us knew each other, some of us didn't. But by the end of it, we all really had become pretty good friends. And it was a big camp, and they had said it was their biggest camp that they had guided. So there were 6 hunters, there was 4 camera guys, plus 4 guides. So it was a big camp, and it was just really enjoyable, the fellowship and getting to spend time with other men and relate with each other and kind of talk about life and all those things. Cause that's the part after the hunt, we stayed up till midnight almost every night probably, and it was an opportunity for these guys to kind of spread the word, and have Bible study and bring some of us that probably aren't as accustomed to that into the mix. And
did you catch on fire?
Well,
reading scripture?
No, but I learned a lot, so it was good. It was all good. So it was a fun camp. I mean, it was a good opportunity for everybody to kind of see other people from different walks of life. Wouldn't you say, Adam?
Oh yeah, definitely. A lot of different, we had country music singers there. We had an actor there. We had professional deer hunting guy there. We had a guy who's does a lot of different stuff, very mediocre like me. But I always, when you in a part of a group like that, especially on a great hunt like that with a bunch of new people, you don't want to go to sleep at night, man, because first of all, it sneaks up on you how late it is because you hunt until 8:15. And then you got to walk back to the cart, wherever that is, 15, 20 minutes. So you get back to the camp about 9. You eat dinner about 9:15, 9:30. And then after that, of course, you got to sit down and watch all the camera footage of everybody's hunt and hear the stories. And all of a sudden you look up and it's 11:30. You're like, oh, man, I got to get up at 5.
Yeah.
And it catches up to you real fast, but you're having so much fun. You almost don't care. It's like, all right, I'll take a nap midday and get over it. But I wouldn't have changed anything except for Matt Drury getting a big bull right there in person. But
should I tell the story?
We had a blast. Next year's your year, Matt.
It should have been this year. All right, I'll tell the story. So the last day comes, and I had said it from the beginning because the pressure to me, I didn't know, but I felt like because the pressure was going to be rising, it was like going to hit 30 for the first time in days. The clouds the fog was going to roll out, dissipate, burn off or whatever. It was going to be a bluebird day. I felt like they were going to finally just get crazy that last day we were there. And so that morning we did hear a ton. We were probably 8 different bulls and put a stalk on one and had an opportunity. And then that afternoon we went out to a spot where the day before we went really deep into this property that we were on the day before. And
permission?
Yes, we actually got to the edge of the property, and that farm I think was 30. I call the farm that whatever they call them ranch was 35,000 acres, and we actually got to the property line. That's how deep in we got on that one. But there was a big water hole, and this is what I'm talking about. Like the property was so well manicured for as big as it is. It's mind-boggling to me. I just know the cost, the input cost that has to go into something like that. So we get down to this like middle of nowhere and we find the fence line or whatever. Well, right before that was a big pond that was nicely manicured. It's a cattle ranch as well. Okay. So like you'd see, as Ben kept calling them, moo cows everywhere. You would go and there was cow, crap everywhere. I'd be like, well, how did a cow get here? How did this cow even find this spot? But there were cows everywhere. And so anyways, it was a watering hole for cattle, but obviously the elk were using it as well. So Clayton, my guide, he had said that day, he's like, man, as hot as it's going to be, it was like 70 that day. So it was, we had been in like the 50s for the most part and 60s, but with that pressure system over the top. So he's like, I think they're going to hit this watering hole. So the day before we had found it, there were four different bulls in this area, kind of like bugling. We didn't really mess with them too much. We tried. They weren't really playing. So Clayton's like, let's get out of here. Let's not push them. We're right kind of at the edge of the property. Let's not push them off. We go back in, and it's at least a 30 to 35 minute drive from when you get to the gate of the property back to this, going like 30 miles an hour, mind you, on a side-by-side. So it's back in there. So we get in there, and right out of the gate, we do hear one bugle kind of halfway up the mountain. So we get set, and by this time, Dustin Lynch had to leave the day before to go, I think, out to Massachusetts or Maine or somewhere like that and play. So Aaron came with us. So we had 2 camera guys, Ben, Aaron, the guide and myself.
Mm-hmm.
So he sets Aaron up across the pond, and he's sitting kind of below the dam in case he needs a float call, basically, and pull an elk past me. And then he sets Ben and I up against a gigantic pine with a little bitty cedar as kind of back cover. We're standing. So we're going to be standing for 2.5 hours, basically. And so we get there, nothing's bugling. He hadn't made a call yet. It's still fairly early. We'd been there maybe 10 minutes, and I'm kind of on a slight incline. So I'm trying to like brush the leaves and the sticks and stuff out from under my feet and get a spot that I'd be comfortable in and not make any noise. And so I'm holding my bow. I got my arrow on it. Pin set at 30 and 55. I got the HHA, the Rise. It's a new version of the Rise. So there's 2 pins on it. And I'm looking down, and Ben goes, "There's a body." And he goes, "Big bull or something like that." And I look up, and by the time I look up, within seconds, the bull's running down, never made a peep. He ran straight to the water, like a 20-yard run from the edge of the timber and the kind of the bottom of the mountain to the water, to the bank. He ran straight to it. And so I grabbed never made a peep. So I grabbed my rangefinder.
How can an animal that big
Dude, Adam, weren't you shocked how silent these elk are? You never heard a stick break, nothing, ever.
Well, especially after we had a little bit of rain and the fog kept everything kind of moist. They were ghosts, man.
Ghosts.
They were ghosts.
Yeah, so I go to my release aid. I go to grab the rangefinder, and I have it, the Leupold rangefinder, right next to the binoculars, like attached to the bino harness.
Like a real elk hunter.
Yeah, so it's ready. I'm ready. And the release aid makes a little bit of a sound. It hit the side of that, like the metal of the release aid hit the plastic of the rangefinder. And it was dead silent. No wind, no nothing. He whips his head to us and just starts staring at us. And so I'm standing there. Ben's literally right in my back, basically. He's right behind me. And I'm saying out loud, quietly, but mostly for myself, "Don't move, and just whispering it. He looks across the pond to Aaron, like where Aaron's at. The footage Aaron has is this right away after this all goes down, and we sat there for another hour. Aaron comes over. He's like, "I just got like the best National Geographic like footage." And, he's just talking about how great his footage was. I'll get to that in a second. So I range him. He's at 42 yards, broadside. Ooh. He's a Volkswagen standing there. Chip shot. Literally a chip shot. I've been practicing forever. It feels like months and months and months. So I look down my dial. I see it's at 30. Just as a reminder, I'm like, okay, I don't have time to change the dial. I need to hold between the 2 pins because he's at 42. My bottom pin's 55. It's pretty simple. Hold high, hold top of back or whatever. He looks back at Aaron, looks at me again. And this all happens in the span. We timed it out in the span of 1 minute.
Wow.
This all plays out.
That's a drama.
But it also feels fast.
Sure.
It's an eternity when he's staring at you, but it's also happening pretty fast. So he looks back at Aaron. I draw my bow. He hears the arrow again. It's dead silent. He hears the, that sound. He whips his head back at me, and I just let it rip. And I guess I held on instead of holding high. And so he drops, thankfully, or I guess, I don't know how you would look at it. He drops a lot. He drops down, which Austin Land told me they'll do. And I was shooting that 2-inch kill zone from NAP as well. I grazed the bottom of his belly right under the heart area, but he kind of rolls, and it does end up exiting like probably 2 inches up from where, from his bottom or whatever. And at the time, we didn't think we hit him at all. I thought it was a clean, maybe grazed the bottom of the belly.
Did it enter?
And it ended up entering because of the way he rolled.
Wow.
And so he kind of walks off or whatever. And Clayton instantly starts cow calling. and so the elk he kind of trotted off. He didn't sprint off, and he looks back and he's looking back, and I knock another arrow just in case, and he's at this point, he's at 74 and he's behind some pines, and then he goes across the pond and he's 80 and he's out of there, but he slowly kind of walks out. And we didn't know I hit him. We didn't know anything. And I thought my arrow was in the water. I thought I saw the water kick up. It turns out those were rocks. Ben kept saying, I think your arrow's on the bank. But Clayton, we stood there for another hour in silence. and Ben and Clayton and Aaron were across the pond or whatever. And so we couldn't communicate with them. And I looked back and Clayton's just stay there just in case another one comes. And again, at the time, I didn't think I had hit anything. Sure. And so the whole time I'm just like looking up at the sky, I'm so hot, so mad at myself after all this trip, and the opportunity was
good bull too.
It was a 320 type bull. Great footage. The footage on both Ben and Aaron's cameras is awesome. And I'm just really upset with myself. And so at one point, Ben says, he goes, do you ever miss, out of nowhere, he goes, do you ever miss your 4-pin? I was like, no, I don't. I knew exactly what I needed to do. I just didn't execute it. And then at one other point, he says something like, Ben, how did you put that? Like, man, that happened so easy.
Ben doesn't have a mean bone in his body. And that's coming from a place of sheer.
Yeah. He's like, it happened so easy. He meant to say it could happen again, but it just came out as like, you really screwed up
really
here.
You're good at screwing things up.
Yeah, it hapappened so easy, and I'm just sitting there.
Could you have used your second pin?
Yeah, of course. It was a 55. All I needed to do is hold. And I knew that, and I said that to myself when I ranged him.
That is a pretty complex process, though. Like, I know, Adam, you were talking about doing that on yours, but
he did fine.
It's unnatural, right? To not put the pin where you want the arrow to go.
Yeah. It was weird because when I ranged him, I looked, I knew it had to happen. I knew all I got to do is hold high between the two pins, and it would be fine. And when he snapped his head back and looked at us, in that moment, I just rushed the shot and held on. I just screwed up. And and so anyways, we're sitting there, and I mentioned to Ben like a half hour later, I was like, because we had to stand there and nothing was happening. No bugles, no nothing. And we're just standing there, and my legs were killing me. I'm sure his legs were killing him. And I go, this is my penance. I go, and unfortunately you're stuck with me. This is the penance for screwing this up, sitting here for an hour and a half in silence, just steaming. I was sweating, just steaming over this thing. Yeah. And so then we go back to camp. Like I said, it's the last night. We eat, like Adam said, this stuff plays out so long in the evening times because a lot of times we're eating at 10. I mean, it was late, and it's like fettuccine and spaghetti, and like you're eating these big heavy meals at 10 o'clock or whatever. So we start watching the footage from the day, and Ben had grabbed me a few minutes earlier. He's like, hey, I think you hit this bull. I think I see blood. And we grabbed Clayton and we told him, he's like, that bull's 100% going to live where you hit him there. He's like, he's 100% going to live. Yeah. Well, all the guys wanted to see the footage. So once we got to looking at the footage, everybody's like, we got to go in there. We got to go in there. And I'm like, I'm down. Let's go in there. Like, this is the last night of the hunt. We got to go in there. And one of the guides kind of was like, yeah, if it was me, we'd go in there. But my guide kept saying, no, it's not a fatal hit. There's no sense in continuing to push him. And so we didn't go in. Fast forward to yesterday, day before yesterday, the guide calls me up. His next group of hunters came in, and he had a hunter have another encounter with him at the same water hole and fine as could be and all that stuff. So that made me feel better because that really was weighing on me that he might have, like, I was like, did I hit an artery? Because he was bleeding decent. It was right below the heart. You know how everything kind of goes into there. And he was right. He was totally fine. So wasn't bleeding still or anything like that. But it was a tough pill to swallow after such a long trip. So, but that's the story.
Wow.
Yeah. Adam, the bookend was Adam executed. Matt did not. That's how he started and ended the trip. But otherwise, it was a fantastic trip. 100% would go back. Like they had the bulls, they had the elk. It was the ground, the amenities, the everything. Amazing. It was amazing, wasn't it?
It was amazing. I know that there's probably some place out there that has like guaranteed 350 bulls or whatever, but a lot of those places were behind the fence. We were hunting 100% fair chase. We had opportunities left and right. And I do think, like Matt said, if that weather system would have been a little bit better for us that week, we'd have had an incredible hunt, even better hunt. We already had an incredible hunt, but it would have been even better. I can't wait to go back there. I thought that place was amazing. Idaho was special. The guides were great. The food was great. The land was perfect. The bulls were awesome. I don't know if it gets much better than that.
No, the 2-hour drive from Boise to McCall was absolutely breathtaking. I've never been to Idaho, so I had no expectations of. I thought it was more flat than it was, and there were parts like that. But man, that drive was fantastic. So
I almost drove into the river like 12 times trying to take pictures on my phone as I was driving down there.
Yeah. So we'll get out of here. We know you got to go. One last thing, we'll do the Real Wild clip because it's Adam's bull. Let's do the Real Wild clip this week before we depart because we got to see what we've been talking about. So today's Real Wild clip brought to you by Victory Archery, the Carbon Arrow experts, and this is Wayno's. This is the moment of truth here. So let's see it. All right. So look at the
holy heck.
I mean, I've never seen anything like that. Watch this. Adam, what's going through your mind at that moment when you see the impact?
Well, we got the GoPro footage too, so you can tell on camera what I was thinking. I was close enough, 28 yards. I was close enough to. I felt like I heard that blood coming out. I know I probably didn't, but it was enough where I saw it pouring out where I knew that was a fatal hit. He was not going to survive that, and it was gonna be quick because it's absolutely pouring out of there. I knew he was going to die quick. We still gave him an hour, but as soon as that arrow hits and you see the blood fall out, I raised my hand up. As like I knew, baby, like I made it happen, So. A lot of thanks goes out to Clayton Gallagher and his group there at Table Mountain Outfitters. It was amazing. That was a great bull. That was my favorite hunt I've ever been on, and I've had some great ones with Drury through the years, but that's probably the most memorable hunt I've ever been on. And I've already told that story 400 or 500 times, and so I just, it was just such a cool moment because you're out there. It's like turkey hunting. You're out there, you're pursuing the animal, you're chasing them, you're in the woods, you're walking down. And man, I love a whitetail hunt, but getting out there in the woods, getting out there in that timber and those mountains and going up and down, and it's just, there's nothing like it.
Yeah. Well said. Yeah. Well, hey, how can people find all the things you're up to these days before we get off of the call here? You're playing music. You're an analyst for, baseball, Major League Baseball. Like where all are you going to be at? Where can people watch you play music these days?
You can find out all the information at AdamWainwrightMusic.com. I've got some shows coming up. Starting next year, starting in January, I've got some really cool big shows starting, and you can find all that information on AdamWainwrightMusic.com. If we update where we'll be playing the rest of the year, we'll put it on that website. Also, you can follow me on Twitter at Uncle Charlie 50, or you can follow me on Instagram at Adam Wainwright Official, and I even have a Facebook page. Make sure it's the right one because there's a lot of fakers out there, but you can. And I'm out there. I got all the stuff, so you can follow what I'm doing any way you want. But please go buy our record too, man. I'd love to share as much music as we can. We got a lot of new music coming out next year too, so we're having fun with it.
We were when we were flying home. It's just how the world works, or higher power or whatever. But the first song that popped up in my library on my phone was "Time to Fly," Adam's song. And it just hit me really, really hard there on the way home because it was just an awesome trip. It was, it really summed it up pretty well. So check out his music.
Well, if that doesn't pan out, maybe Camera Guy is next.
For sure. Camera Guy. Hey, Randy Johnson did it. Why can't you?
Got to follow the way of the big unit, no doubt, man.
That's right.
Yeah, I had a blast doing that. I'd still rather be pulling the bow back, but if I'm tagged out or if somebody needs me, if I'm in Missouri and Matt needs a camera guy, I know how to work it now. I was starting to get somewhat savvy about but there was still one time I was in black and white, had no idea how to get it up black and white. One time I was in slow-mo, had no way of knowing how to get it out of slow-mo, but I know all that stuff now, so we're good.
Every night he came back and he'd give Ben the camera, and he's like, look, I don't know. And Ben's like, I don't know how you got in this mode. I got to figure it out.
It's like when my kids get to my electronics.
One day he came back and the camera was just brown. This black camera was just brown with dust. I was like, what happened to it? He's like, we were in the back of the side by side.
Of the side by side, there was too many people with us to ride in the front, so I sat in the back of this thing. And before I knew how dusty it was, I knew I was like covering my face up and trying to cover my eyes and stuff. Then I looked down the camera and I was like, oh. So now I know how to.
Luckily, he let it get rained on the next day, and he was able to clean it off.
All's well that ends well.
Yeah, it was an awesome trip, buddy.
Congrats again, Wayno.
Can't wait for the next one.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate y'all. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. All right. I think that sums it up, Timmy.
Yeah.
On to the whitetail season.
Yeah, let's make something happen. How about that?
All right. Until next time, everybody, thanks for watching, and peace out.
Take land management to the next level with DeerCast's exclusive virtual rain gauges. Pinpoint accuracy and historical data, all powered by industry-leading ag weather services. DeerCast has the tools to keep you ahead of your game.
We're adding new videos every week, so make sure to click that subscribe button and check out all of our amazing content. This episode of DoD TV is brought to you by DeerCast Maps, waypoints, weather, virtual rain gauges, and more. Every tool you need to get ahead of your game.